I'm with my good friend, crime investigator, crime journalist Thomas Hampson. Thomas, how are you?
Good. How about you?
Good, good, good. You know, it's an interesting time, Tom, for sure. We've got all the craziness going on. You had brought up to me again earlier about those 100 people that were from the CIA, all our national intelligence agencies, in a chat room talking about all of the perverse hedonistic ways they have sex and they want to have sex with each other, and these are the people in charge of going out and keeping us safe from from all the evils of the world, huh?
Right.
When you and I go out and speak about stolen innocence, what they're doing to our kids, a lot of times people will say why. The question of why. Why is the exploitation of our children in our public school systems allowed? And it's an interesting time. We're seeing our civilization unravel, and people are feeling helpless about this. And that's a demonic thing to feel helpless, to turn away from. And we see that the kids with their mental illness, it's a hopelessness that they feel. Whenever evil is pushed on you, and whenever you feel these perverse things, you're either going to accept it and become part of that. But for these young people that are coming around today, and I really want to address young people and leave a lesson for them, Tom, this Gen Z, that's these young men, especially, that are waking up to something's wrong. Something's wrong. They don't know quite what it is. And I think it's up to us, those of us that are, that are also seeking something more, all of us fallen creatures that are looking for something more, to be guideposts for them, to open this thing up and say, hey, unless we stand up for what's true, good, and beautiful, not only are we just heading to nothing ourselves in our personal lives, but the whole society and the whole culture comes down. Let me just start this thing out, Tom, with Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who had embraced Marxism, embraced this brokenness, this atheistic culture where you throw out God, all meaning and purpose out of people's lives. He's in the gulags, set up the Russian prison system, set up for anybody that the government didn't like. He's in there for 8 years for some letter that he wrote that pushed back against Stalin, got public. And so this is his a short thing. This is how he summed this all up. During his time in the archipelago, this is the gulags again, Solzhenitsyn had slowly but forcefully rejected the Marxism of his youth and embraced the Christian faith. This conversion was not achieved, however, without a great amount of personal suffering and even a greater amount of personal reflection. This is a battle, Tom. This is why I got the Claymore sword back here for young people. You got to pick up that sword. You got to know that we're in a battle. Marxism claims that some groups, he said, and classes of people, human beings, are good and others bad. So, to perfect itself, Marxism says humanity must isolate and eliminate the bad people. Okay, makes sense, right? Solzhenitsyn came to realize instead the dividing line between good and evil lies within every single individual human heart. So that battle that we see out there, Tom, that we're talking about, started in the individual human heart. That chat room with 100 people that we're in, with all these perverse, hedonistic ways to live, now go out into the world and bring that brokenness into the world. So the Marxism position thus argued that humanity would be perfected through the inevitable progress of world history. If the dividing line, though, is within all human hearts, however, then only limited improvements are possible in this life, and degeneracy is always equally possible. The Marxist position, he said, is to be rejected, it seems, because it overlooks the reality of original sin. So it's amazing, Tom. So I'll end my monologue here with this. People will ask us again, why? Why are we doing this to our kids in the schools? And it's because of these people that have lost their hearts, have become atheistic, have thrown out any meaning and real meaning and purpose in their life, and they're grasping, right, hedonistically, pleasure based, individualistic. I'm free to do anything I want. and we're pushing this down on our kids. When the reality is, it's original sin that we're really battling, and each of us have to stand up, Tom, and take these virtues back on, don't we?
Yeah, yes, we do, and it's pretty obvious that we keep sinking lower and lower every day.
We are because what we're seeing. Look at let's pick on the European Union because they're a little bit ahead of us in the United States, and we were right on their tail. And I really think, Tom, that if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were in charge of the United States, we got out of this by just, to me, it was inches. I know if you look at a map, it's red, right? But it wasn't by that much, really, but you saw people
No, it wasn't.
finally say something's wrong, and they turned out across the board, right? Anyways, they all went red. Here's what we did: we just skipped going right down the abyss with everybody else because the United States was not only has accepted all of this fallen nature of human beings and pushing this down even to our kids, but we were pushing it all over the world. And you see this, in the amazing amount of evil that the United States and pornography, abortions, the LGBTQ stuff, pushing it all around. And you go, what is that? What is behind all of that? And it's all division. It's all breaking down marriage and the family. It's taking God out. It's an atheistic thing. It all gets back to what Solzhenitsyn just said in that opening statement.
Well, these a lot of this has happened as a result of the willful lying on the part of the what's called the legacy media. They are intentionally lying about things,
Yeah.
and they accuse other media outlets like Fox News and some of these others of being liars, when in fact the much of what they say is a lie are really factual, really um, truthful information.
You,
Um,
you know what's interesting, Tom, and just to piggyback on what you just said with the mass media, we saw this in the polling too in the last few elections, where the
yes,
pollsters were on the side of the mass media ahead of the game, saying that Trump is losing, Kamala's way ahead,
right.
Biden's doing well, and they're all trying to swing and normalize this fall, aren't they? They're trying to normalize the fall. And when you see this happening with mass media, the power of that, this is why kids got to get off these phones, Tom, at an early age, because they haven't been formed, their consciences haven't been formed, they're innocent, and this is a great time, as the left knows, as atheists know, and I don't go on to even, it's not a political thing. When I say Republicans versus Democrat or Trump getting elected, Trump was very clear on this. This isn't just a Republican. Yeah, it is the Republican Party, but it's a populist movement of individual human hearts who have decided that no, enough of this evil, and we have to embrace true meaning, purpose, what's true, good, and beautiful again. Stand up for the
Right.
virtues.
I'll give you an example of the legacy media type response about this, like the NSA and the CIA, these disgusting, perverted conversations. Here's what comes out of the
Now, when you say
uh,
perverted conversations, again, crack that open for people that are just tuning in, Tom, and and
well, there
and
were
get back to that what Tulsi Gabbard has found and what was exposed there. Break that
okay. Well,
open
there
for people.
okay. There was a chat capability called Intel Link that is available to all of the intelligence agencies, CIA, NSA, DIA, even the FBI, counterintelligence. There's a number of these different agencies that have access to this Intel link, which is a way for intelligence agencies to work together when there's a common kind of issue that they're
Right.
that
To
they're
share
looking at.
information, right? Share
Yeah, to share
information and
information, to exchange information, to get to increase your understanding of what's happening.
right. So for
Um,
people to understand it, we're sometimes we're in these different silos, like as being an intelligence officer, you just brought it up before
right.
we came on. that certain people are into the, controlling the digital waves. What's going on there? Somebody else is developing, like the CIA, human persons, say as
Right.
spies or whatever, undercover.
And the
And,
Defense Intelligence Agency focuses more on their target is our military capabilities of other countries. So they have different areas of focus, but there's also a lot of overlap. Like
right.
I was in Air Force intelligence, but in reality, I was the part of the Air Force arm of the National Security Agency, and so um, we um, we monitored the electronic communications. I was overseas. We would tap phones. We'd go in and tap phones places. We would listen to the radio waves. We'd develop information using electronic communications and come up with an understanding of what's happening, and then send our reports to headquarters Air Force and also headquarters to the NSA. It would go
So
also
now
to the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So all of
So
this
this is
stuff
what we
now,
get down to. This chat, these chat rooms are
right,
supposed to be used to bring this information together so
right,
that in my silo I can open myself up to what you're saying and then try to get
right.
even a better picture, right? And then
Yes,
bring this to the president and to the people in charge and say, "Hey, this is what's going on. This is what we see, and now maybe we can do something about it." So
yeah, I can get
instead of
on.
doing that, tell people what's going on in those chat rooms, Tom.
So, now instead of using the chat rooms to say, "Hey, what do you got on this that I'm working on?" These guys are talking about gang banging and their sex change operations and being a non-binary and organizing polycules and talking about the next time they can get together and wanting to hustle each other. So there's over 100 of them that were involved, that have been identified, that have been involved in these IntelliLink chats, that have now they've been fired. But um the Christopher Rufo is the one that broke the story. He had a source inside.
He's a courageous guy, by the
Yeah,
way.
and
Just
he
so
had
you know.
a source. Somebody in there got so fed up with it, they fed him the information, kind of a whistleblower, which is good. I'm glad that they blew the whistle on this,
But
because
Tom, again, if Biden and Kamala Harris were in office right now, that would have
nothing
been
would happen.
silenced, and
Right,
and
nothing would have happened.
Rufo would have been taken out. I mean, he would have really. I mean, he was being attacked already. The powers of the federal government would have started to come after him for exposing
Oh,
this.
for sure, they would have gone after him and find out who the whistleblower is, and they
And
would have locked him up if he didn't give them any information. So
that's right. That's
this
right.
is the kind of thing that these but it isn't just the hundreds that were in this chat room that were on there. The whistleblower also talked about how there have been many hundreds of these gender activists that have infiltrated all of our intelligence agencies. Now, here's this response from somebody that's Noor Al Sibai, or whatever his name is. He's with, not sure what outlet he writes for, but he's more of a uh, mainstream journalist. This is his response to Christopher Rufo's things. The messages published today from an NSA messaging platform allegedly involving a CIA official are unacceptable and have no place in the agency. Liz Lyons, the newly appointed public affairs director for the CIA, said in a statement, "The CIA will be taking immediate action on this matter, which only further proves the need for serious reform." And then he says, "Beyond that confirmation, however, the unfolding story is awfully murky, including that it originated with a conservative muckraker behind the debunked claim that Haitian immigrants were eating cats in Ohio." So, in other words, he just immediately says this is all a bunch of BS, and it's been blown out of proportion. It's not. It's no big deal. And this is the kind of disinformation that's coming out of, and minimization that's coming out about these kind of things that are going on in all areas of our government. This is an outright lie that's being spread by these people. You have to realize that the secrets and the um, activities of these agencies, that the people in these agencies are extraordinarily important. they're not supposed to be out there, and they aren't out there playing games. This is uh, real life and death situations that are dealing with every single day. Um, and and to have people that have this unserious attitude toward the work that they're doing, so unserious that they're using top secret channels to talk about gang banging and polycules.
And Tom, it goes deeper than that because everybody knows or should know that sex and blackmailing people have been going on forever, and this is one of the main
Right.
ways that you can silence people and get them to do what you want them to do. We see this in our congressmen, our senators. If we knew how many of those people were blackmailed, it's the Epstein Island thing, right? That's this has been silenced by the most powerful people in the world because they've been blackmailed. And if that blackmail ever got out, that's why they took Epstein out finally. And now they don't they have those videos someplace, right? But they're
Right.
not going to expose them. I doubt we'll ever see them. But anyways, my point being
Uh,
that all of these people in intelligence can be blackmailed now. They can all, if they're still there, I can bring these things up and they're going to do whatever I want them to do. So there's two sides of this. We have the actual hedonistic people that are just into all of this sex stuff, right? But then you also have the money, the power, the orchestra leaders up here under the direct rule of Satan, I think, and now they can use those people any way they want, and so they let this go on, Tom, and then this spilled over into our education system. Our kids are getting the same indoctrination now, and in a way, the whole country is falling for this thing, and then we push this again all over the world. So we're in a weird spot. Where this is a battle between good and evil.
well, this is the thing that we talked about before about virtue being a requirement
Mm,
for a civilized culture, for a
yeah.
free culture, for our kind, for our nation was founded as John Adams said, for a moral and religious people. And so if we don't have that, if we don't have a virtuous people, if we don't have people that are committed and honorable, committed to the point where they would die for their own country, then we're not going to have a country anymore. Now, how virtuous do you think these hundreds of agents were that are talking about all these different perverted sexual activities that they engage in or want to engage in?
Yeah.
Are these
Yeah.
people virtuous?
Yeah. And this is the exact thing that's getting down all the way down through our civilization. Just to show how wide this is, this is being pushed down into our government schools.
Right.
I was just reading something by SEICUS, which is basically the education arm of Planned Parenthood, that is in charge of sex education for our kids. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And so the president and CEO, Christine, it's so young. Her name is Soyong. She comes out and just says that sex education is a powerful vehicle for social change. And so when you talk about all these things, she said, sex education that's being pushed on our kids. She says starts in kindergarten and continues through 12th grade, and we're here to change the culture, and we start talking about safer sex, but it's also, she says, dismantling the systems of power, oppression, and misinformation that allow today's biggest sexual and reproductive health and rights injustice to exist in the first place. So we have to
Well,
dismantle,
these
right?
are these are the same people that say that the only thing that's important when it comes to sexuality is consent.
Yeah,
That no matter what age you are, the only thing that's important is consent, to get
yeah,
consent.
yeah.
So if you're 5 years old and you give consent, then you're free game.
Yeah. So now we have all of this. We think we're helpless. that there's nothing we can do about it, that it's
Right.
just a corrupt system. And so the people that should be standing up feel hopeless, and the kids are feeling hopeless. We see this, Tom, in their mental illness. Their mental illness is screaming up, and we allow this thing to go on. Finally, some parents, thank goodness, are waking up to the fact that their kids are not okay and are starting to push back on this. And so, what can we do? We have to take it. Our responsibility first is to become people of virtue, to know that we have to have a foundation. I have to know who I am and what the meaning and purpose of my life is. And if I'm not willing, to our founding fathers brought this out, if I'm not willing to sacrifice myself and fight for liberty, fight for freedom, then we will lose the freedom. It said, our founding fathers, while not perfect, understood, as you said, our Constitution, our republic, John Adams said, was only made for a religious and moral people. It's wholly inadequate to the government of any other. That and the atheists know this very well. You want to take down the United States, was this beacon of light for the whole world at one time, pushing good things into the world, and now we've done the opposite, Tom. We flipped ourselves, and now we're pushing all the evil into the world. It's really something when you think about when I was a kid. We thought, man, this is the greatest country in the world, and in many ways it still is if we come back and stand up again. And
Well, it
if we
still
don't.
is the greatest country. But now we're discovering that there have been people in there undermining everything. Funding transgender operas in Peru and um, DEI initiatives in Burma. I mean, what the heck?
Yeah.
This is not what we were intended to be. And now we find out that our entire intelligence apparatus has been infiltrated by people whose primary focus is on their next perverted sexual encounter.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, what do we do, Tom? What are we doing about this? We
Well,
really
one
have
of the
to
things
get back. Uh-huh.
I think there's the very first thing that people need to do is to decide to run for office. Good people need to start running for office. And if you can't do it, if you're old like me and you're not able to don't have the stamina to do it, then support good people who are running for office. Encourage them in what they're doing. Hold them accountable. Become better informed. Most people are just not even in any way informed on anything of substance. Only just the most superficial levels. And so it's very important for people to get informed.
Yeah, and when you say run for office, I keep it local, guys.
Right.
In the beginning, run for school boards, library boards, or support people that are good people there. We have to bring back our morality into our education system. There's just no way around it. And I'm not saying I don't think, especially here in Illinois, that we're going to rush to bring biblical principles back in. But there are states around the world or around the country, I should say, that are school districts that are actually doing this, states that are actually doing this. You realize that we really are founded on Judeo-Christian principles. And, we became the most homogenous country in the whole world. So what we stood for, this true, good, and beautiful, everybody wanted to come here. It didn't matter. We are made up of every single race, every single religion, every single country in the world is represented here. Well, what united us were those Judeo-Christian principles. And when you take those out and you undermine this, the whole reason that our relatives, my relatives, came here was for that, and they understood that no matter where they came from, I have to live by the rules of the United States, based on the Ten Commandments, based on justice, based on all of those things that we've been talking about. And if we're afraid to say that, Tom, and if we're afraid to say nope, doesn't matter, we become nothing. We become nothing, Tom, and we lower the bar. And I'll give you just this one example. It was at a school board meeting, and somebody was pushing back, exposing the pornography behind the LGBTQ literature that's in a children's library, middle school and elementary libraries. And somebody said, "Well, my kid is a trans child. My child, if you take those books out of the library, then my child will no longer feel comfortable, will no longer feel accepted. And if he's not allowed, he who is now a she is not allowed to go into the girls' washroom, then you're prejudiced, you're a hater. And reality, what that means, Tom, is that what's the common good? What do we represent? There's a reason that we separate the girls from the boys, because girls can be used and abused, and we've seen this over and over. We're protecting, especially these young girls from this, right, and from being over sexualized. So instead, what do? We allow one person, right, that decides as an individual that they're being picked on. So we lower the whole culture to their level instead of saying, no, I'm sorry. We have a standard. We have what's called a common good, the good for the whole society. And no matter how confused you are, you can stay in your brokenness if you want to, but you can't drag the rest of us down. Or
Right.
you can allow the rest of us to lift you up and become part of who we are. But then you have to accept reality, Tom. I have to accept the truth. And if I don't accept the truth of my own body,
Yeah.
there's not going to be much chance for anything else.
Well, the other thing is that the other is that um, people need to get their own churches more involved in this battle as well, because they pretty much, most churches have stepped back from the actual cultural battle. They don't want to make any
Well,
waves. It's kind of like um, what was the original Richard J. Daley? His motto was "Don't make no waves, don't back no losers." That
mm,
seems to be the adoption. What's being adopted by our churches: "Don't make no waves, don't back no losers." And so there, these fights can be hard. So you can't just sit back and watch and stay neutral on them. And one of the examples I was looking up. Um, Google Books is one of the places you can look up all kinds of look up about books and where they're available. And so I looked up "All Boys Aren't Blue" and in Google Books, and one of the searches came back that showed, oh, they're at Eisenhower. This book is at Eisenhower Junior High, Schaumburg High School, Schaumburg Township Library, St. Hubert School, which kind of shocked me. Here it is. This is a Catholic school. What in the world?
mm.
Um, uh, these kind of books don't belong in school libraries.
Now, if somebody wanted to, a little off tangent here, but not much, if just to stop you for a while, if somebody wanted to look that up, Tom, so what did you go under? Google
Google Books.
Google Books, and then did you
Yeah, go
put
to
in a
Google Books.
geographical
Well, you
region
go
or
to
area?
Google Books and you find out about the books, and then there's another link on there that shows local libraries or
Mm.
all libraries. And I think one of the searches, it was over 30,000 libraries in the United States that has that book.
Which is a disgusting, really a
Right.
disgusting book, right? That has no place in
No.
our educational system,
It's
and
certainly nothing. Yeah, it really is. It's really just a
it's
perverted.
pornography. It's
It's
pornography.
pornography. It's no different than um, these than any than um, straight pornography. It's just
yeah.
it is gay pornography for LGBT people. I guess I don't know, and
Right.
so they
And we're
should
not
know.
talking about I'm not talking about book banning here. You
Right,
you can go and bring that home to your kids if you want
right.
to. You can bring them every perverse idea imaginable. But again, you're not lifting those kids up, right? You're not saying to them, when a kid that has nothing that has no formation at all, or even a kid that does, and then they read pornographic books, right? And the so-called romance novels, right, that are
Right.
very explicit. When they do that, again, you obliterate their moral imaginations. You take all the virtue out of their hearts. You
Well,
revert
see,
from that.
I'm opposed to even parents allowing their kids to read stuff
Well,
like
of
that.
course, yes. So,
That
of course,
the Supreme Court didn't say. The Supreme Court actually, there's a ruling that they made that said that obscenity for a child is different than obscenity for an adult. You can put place greater restrictions on what's available to children than what you can on adults.
My point, Tom, was that let's not lower the whole, again, this whole civilization. Let's not lower our whole education system
Right.
to meet some perverse ideas of someone. What I'm saying though is, they'll say, well, you're trying to ban books, and my point was, no,
Yes.
I'm not banning a book. You can buy this perverse stuff if you want to. If you insist on your kid reading it, then my point was, hey, if you got a deranged parent, allow them. Look, I'm not going to try to stop them, but let's not put it in the public square. Was my point. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, why are the libraries buying books like this? It's still not banning books. They can still go out and buy it on Amazon or whatever. But why should I, as a taxpayer,
Taxpayer. Yeah.
pay for that book for
Right.
you, your perverted, to satisfy your perverted
and we
desires?
and we know why, because the ALA is a neo-Marxist institution now, and so they're trying to break apart marriage and the family again, taking God out, etc. They call it queering, queering the library indexes,
Right.
and really what the word queering means when you got LBGTQ is queering means really taking everything that we know is normal in our culture, everything that we're talking about that builds up the common good, and undermining all of that. And that's what we're seeing today. And
Well, it's
Tom,
it's
no matter what you say, the civilization, if it allows go like this, is coming down. It's
yeah. Well,
unraveling.
it's I like to follow the money here too. Now, as I mentioned, it's like 30,000 libraries in the U.S. have got this book. Um, that's at least $5 a copy that goes to the author of that. Hundred and
That's
fifty
right.
thousand dollars that the guy is guaranteed to make out of just what's available in the library. So
I,
how
I,
how what are these people that put out this perverse kind of material? They can just keep churning it out,
well,
and
here's what
libraries are
happens,
just
Tom. This
sucking it
is
up.
what's happening to children's authors now is children's authors, because of what you just said, children's authors now, they need to put some of these things in,
Yes,
because otherwise they're not going to be accepted by the libraries, and the book publishers then will not publish their books because they
that's
know
right.
exactly what you just said. Here we have all these libraries, we're guaranteed them all to buy a copy of this book and push this out, and if I get rid of that audience, then the money won't be there. And you're exactly right. So I know children's authors that will not be, they know they won't be published because they're writing old-fashioned literature that's
Right.
instilling virtues and stories there,
Yeah.
that we knew as kids. And so that's why when I'm talking about education in schools, we have to get back to great literature, great books. We have to get rid of those tablets, and we have to get rid of those phones in the schools, and we have to really get back to paper and writing, because when you slow down, Tom, when you're talking about virtues and stories and books, the teacher brings that out in class. The kids start to think about this, and it starts to become part of who you are. You see the courage, you see the things in, the examples in this book, and you go, I want to be like that. And you
Right.
start to dream and imagine. You bring that courageous person that's standing up against evil, but we're trying to take that away from kids.
Well, see, like the every kid with a smartphone or a tablet or whatever can get access to the digital library. The digital library has all these books on it that and there's no all they need is a local library card and they can get whatever they want. There's no
Yeah.
restriction on the material that's on there that kids can download. So they get access to things that are under the Supreme Court ruling are obscene, and yet nothing is being done to stop that.
And I think that gets back to our premise, that we all have to stand up. We all have to grab that sword, and it starts in the individual human heart. You have to
Right.
decide who you are as a person, if you're going to bring goodness and beauty into this world, or you're going to bring this perverse garbage in the world. And if you don't stand up, Sunday, yesterday, as we're recording this, Tom, um, there was the reading at Mass was from Romans 10, and it said that you have to accept Jesus Christ in your heart and then you'll be justified, and then you have to confess him with your mouth to be saved. In other words, the power of the word and the power of what we do in our actions has a real effect in the world. To Schultz-Nietzsche's point, we're fallen people, and unless we lift we allow Christ to lift us up. God is the only power that's going to lift us up out of this mess. But it starts in the individual human heart, and then I have to confess Him. And what does that mean, Tom? I have to confess goodness in the world. I have to bring truth into the world. I have to tell that poor, confused trans child, calls himself trans, that I'm there. I'm empathetic. I'm compassionate. But we don't lower the bar and leave him in that hopelessness and that confusion. We say, hey, there is a better way, and you're free to choose it. But we're afraid, Tom, to even put that dream, that imagination in that child's mind that maybe I'm not in the wrong body, that maybe there's something I can aspire to instead of staying in this garbage, of twisting and distortion of my own body, even, and unfortunately, it's usually parents and people around them that are pushing this on little kids. Little kids don't, and I'm talking about little kids here, Tom.
Right.
They don't make this stuff up. Somebody has been pushing this down on them.
Well, you know that one of the videos we got in our presentation of Stolen Innocence is that preschool teacher that is indoctrinating these little kids with the idea that you can be non-binary,
Yeah, yeah,
and about the whole sexuality when they're 4 years old.
yeah. And what?
This
And
is
here's what
See, this
happens.
is that
Even
that's criminal to me.
it is criminal. And what happens is you have priests. I'm Catholic. You have priests that do exactly what you said. They're trying earlier. The priests need to, and pastors and churches need to step up, right? Well, here's what happens, Tom. They've fallen for the lie too. They've been sitting in that proverbial pot with that frog, slowly cooking to death. And so they see a young person, right? This happens all the time. I see it all the time. When I'm giving talks in churches where a pastor will or a priest, pastor of his parish will push back and say, Jack, I know these young people. They really have same-sex attractions and blah 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 blah. And I say, yes, of course they. I understand that. I meet them all the time. Um, but to be pastoral, you can have empathy and compassion and walk with them, and you should. We all should. But at the end of the day, as Jesus said, but then go and sin no more, right?
Right.
That yeah, the attractions are real for whatever reason, right? There's all kinds of reasons that they have these attractions, but we're all fallen. One guy is addicted to sex, one guy's addicted to gambling, I mean, it's a million things, right?
We all have desires that we're not supposed to indulge.
That's right. So
You
here's
know,
what's happens. So this pastor now, because he feels this way and that your attractions are same-sex attractions are real, he never challenges them to that at the end of the day, this is not just about this little temporal space. We are working out our eternal salvation here. And Jesus is the perfect example of this. Jesus came into the world and he took on a body and a soul to unite us to divinity. When we walk away from this story, Tom, this is the founding of our country again, Judeo-Christian principles. And if we take away our story in the United States, we will unravel as we're doing now. And there's no way to stop this. If you want to feel hopeless and helpless, it's because we no longer believe in the a power of God to change our hearts, to give us a new life, to overcome sin and death in the world and in our own lives. And if we don't believe that, Tom, it's coming down. But the beauty of it is this last election, every single person I know that was fighting for Trump wasn't fighting just for the person of Donald Trump. It was to restore common sense again, restore this common good
right.
again. And they were all Christians. I didn't meet any. Look at, I'm sure there probably are some atheists or agnostics or other religions out there, but everybody that I met that was in that movement, we call it MAGA movement or whatever you want to call it, Make
Right.
America Great Again. It starts with Christianity and prayer. And I don't know anybody that isn't praying for our for Trump, praying for these cabinet members. We're all fallen people, man, and we need prayer, and we need to be able to push up. And I think that's really what this all comes down to.
Well, I definitely keep praying for him. I'm concerned that somebody is going to try to kill him again. And same thing with many of the cabinet members, that there's just so much
Evil
hatred
out
that's
there,
been
yeah.
built up.
Yeah.
Um, and they're definitely shaking things up.
Yeah, they are.
But we do have we have a very brief opportunity to actually try to turn things around in our culture. And if people don't start taking advantage of that, it's going to fall right back to where it was in the next administration.
Yeah. Well, here's the hope, Tom. The hope is
Yeah,
in Jesus Christ. Let's just call a spade a spade.
that's
And
right.
the reality is, we've seen this all throughout. This is the first time in history, in human history, that we've thrown out a higher power. It's whatever the Indian tribes here in the United States in the beginning, they all worship something.
Right.
And even if it was the sun or whatever it was, nature, they worship something. It's in a person's heart, in a human being's heart, that we want to transcend our brokenness. And but but nobody had the power to actually do that until Christianity came in. And you really see the power of transcendence. I mean, we built up all of the civilization through this power of Jesus Christ coming back into the world. And there was no power like this ever that could change whole civilizations in the whole world. And look at it's we know the second coming is come, at some point,
Yeah.
Tom. And now I don't know if the
It seems
Antichrist
seems
has to
pretty
be here.
close to me.
Yeah, we might be getting close, huh? So there's
Yeah.
our hope. And the most beautiful thing to leave this whole podcast today on a sense of hope is that we're seeing this for the first time in maybe in many people's lives, as the evils being exposed more and more and more. COVID had a lot to do with this, where people have to stand back because the evil's gotten so ramped up that people are starting to say, "Ooh, something's got to change." And so, in a way, this is a great time to be alive, because never before have I ever felt like, wow, yeah, if I don't choose him, then this thing's coming down. And it never had this. I knew it in my heart, Tom, but you never had this conviction because it was never this clear.
Right.
This battle, like you said, with these 100 people, their main occupation is how they're going to have sex with one another, and sex is a beautiful thing. But it comes back to marriage and the family and the nuclear family. There is never in the history, and all through history, there's no power like marriage and the family. It's the greatest governing form of governance that ever existed. Every civilization is always built on marriage and the family, and when you break that down and you take God out, and it breaks down, and then you see everything on top of it collapse, and that's what you're seeing today. Until we build that back up again, understand that a child needs a mom and a dad, and a mom and a dad that has been united in some way with this transcendent higher power, not to bring brokenness into a home. And that's the only way you're going to build this thing back up again. So that's the reality.
Yeah.
Any last words there, Thomas?
No, I think people just need to get up and do something.
Yeah,
One part of the things about repentance is it's turning away from what you did before, but also it's moving toward what the right thing is to do.
yeah,
And so that's what people need to start uh, um,
doing. Yeah.
doing. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and just to my earlier point, go read Romans 10, and what you have in your heart now is not enough. You have to confess Him with your mouth, and it's in that because we're creatures, and
Right.
as being creatures through our bodies, through the language of our body and the language of our words, we bring that power into this created space.
Right.
And if we don't bring it into the created space, a void happens, and that void is filled with evil. The
And
principalities and the
that's
powers of the world will fill
and
it
so
up.
that's what's happened. I think what Dietrich Bonhoeffer talked about the cheap grace that um, uh, uh, grace without works, I think, or faith without works is dead.
Hmm.
And that doesn't mean that we earn our way into heaven, but you have to do something, not just revel in the grace. Because
Yeah.
without doing something, you're really not living out what God intended for you.
Yeah. And look at this isn't brain surgery. This is the two great commandments to be filled
Right.
with the grace and then go out and be that grace and love your
Yes.
neighbor. I mean, this is the basic premise of a human being.
Right. But I think we get stuck in the modern church. We've gotten stuck on the whole grace side
Yeah.
without doing anything.
Yeah. Yeah. And we leave it up to the state, right? This is what
Right. Yes.
socialism does.
Right. Yes.
We're going to go too long here, but I have a brother-in-law that told my wife, he said, I'm a socialist because then the state will help all of these people. And you just got to laugh. He's abdicated his own responsibility to the state, and the state is made up of all of those people we're talking about that are fighting good and evil in their heart, that have given over, too many of them, to evil. And what happens to that dollar? That dollar, maybe a nickel or a dime, reaches the actual poor people, and the rest of it gets siphoned off. And you and I have talked about this many times. Hey,
Right.
you go out, you give a dollar to a poor guy, you volunteer on the soup kitchens, you do it. Because if you don't do it, Tom, you're not working out your own salvation. And at the end of the day, God will ask you for that and say, okay, what did you do? Oh, I
Right.
abdicated this to the corrupt deep
I
state,
I
and
paid my taxes.
yeah, I paid my taxes. God says, "Oh my gosh, you should have never been paying all those taxes, you
Right.
you weak thing, you."
Well,
Thomas,
there's actually a meme that I put up there. It says if your non-governmental organization goes out of business because it gets its government money cut, it's not a
it's not
non-governmental
no,
organization.
no, that's true. That's true. Hey, God bless you. Hey, thanks, Tom.